Hello from Kingston Business School and welcome to our AI in Business webinar. Today we're focusing on marketing and on separating signal from noise. I'm Samar Gad, the director of MBA, and we've chosen this theme because the gap between the expectations from AI and AI results has never been wider. According to the 2026 Salesforce State of Marketing report, 87% of marketers now use generative AI in some form. Yet, McKinsey reported that only 6% of companies are generating meaningful business impact from it, and fewer than 1 in 10 are scaling AI at all. And that is the signal to noise problem, and that is what we're gonna unpack today. Over the next hour, we will help you identify what actually matters and worth clients' attention. And we will also unpack where you have to pump more budget into ads and if that actually would fix a leaky pipeline. And of course, we will draw the line between where to trust AI and where to trust your team and have that human judgment. And of course, you will walk away with practical ideas on building AI into a scalable marketing system. Now, please welcome our expert panelists. We have David Pugh-Jones. He's the Chief Marketing Officer at Corpora AI, and it's the world's first scientific frontier research platform. David is a commercially focused marketing leader with over 25 years of experience across global blue chips, scale-ups, and startups. David is also part of the founding team at Corpora, and he's working at the intersection of AI, human intelligence, and this platform really helps leading corporations accelerate R&D from biotech to aerospace. Good to have you, David.
Thanks for having me.
Next on the panel, Kudzai Kashora. Kudzai is a conversion marketing manager at Lloyds Banking Group, and she's bringing in over 10 years in financial services, specializing in lead generation and multi-channel strategy. And for the last 6 years, she has led marketing for private banking, wealth and savings campaigns across Lloyds Bank, Halifax, and Bank of Scotland. Thank you for joining us, Kudzai.
Thanks for having me.
Last but not least, we have Nora Chen. She's the head of UK GTM at Fotor, and this is an AI-driven creative platform. Now over to our fantastic panelists. I will start with you, Kudzai, with the first question we have in mind. How do you define signal versus noise in marketing? And do you think AI is currently making this problem better or worse?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd say the two are definitely very, very different. I would see signal as activity that is really specific, measurable, and drives actions. It's the stuff that actually moves customers down the pipeline and down the marketing funnel. So, for example, a lead, an ad that leads to a booking or an email that ends up driving a purchase. Those are things I would classify as signals. Whereas noise, on the other hand, is attention that is driven without any outcome. So it might look good on the surface, it might get you really high impressions, viral content, lots of views, but it doesn't actually translate into any kind of meaningful action or business impact. And a lot of those kind of noise bits tend to lead to endless scrolling, making it harder for users to decide what their next kind of best action is. And then, I guess in terms of the fixing the pipeline and the role that it plays, I think AI definitely is helping to fix to a certain extent, but when used correctly, I think it can help identify patterns which can support how brands optimize their content and how campaigns are built for customers. But it has to be used in the right way. Otherwise, brands are just scaling noise and increasing the content volume without actually getting any outcome benefits.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kudzai. David, how do you see that in information dissemination? Do you believe there's a distinction that you can make and how AI is making that distinction better or worse?
Yeah, I think let's preface this with, I mean, this is an advisory scenario, so you take this all with a pinch of salt based on our experiences. But look, we're in an unprecedented landscape in the realms of what AI is doing, not just in marketing, but in media, in content, and creativity, and the way us as humans navigate what happens and went before us and what goes ahead. So my answer probably would say is that AI is probably amplifying both sides of the coin. The question is then how we then learn to navigate it, because from a signal point of view, and specifically in any brand communications or media, signals give you enough clarity to make a confident decision, but is that information or data grounded in insight? Is it relevant? Is it connected? Whereas on the flip side, the noise can distract you from that. Okay, so we are now inundated with more data. I think the last stat I saw was something between 400 and 500,000 new pieces of content being created, literally every day. It's phenomenal in that sense. So we're seeing a lot of data and information in the form of, when people call it, I don't know, let's call it the realm of doom scrolling and endless fast moving content that drives some form of attention, but it's not necessarily enough to accelerate our own education and learning. So I think we just need to be a little bit more cognizant about where you're getting that information and what you're translating, and then how you're passing that on, whether that's to your friends in a pub or to the consumer, whether that be B2B or B2C.
From the company perspective, how do you identify what is worthwhile for the client's attention? So you do proper targeting, and what are the top priorities when committing to utilizing AI to personalize and target?
Yeah, I mean, look, if we look at this from a reality perspective, attention is driven by our relationship with the client. So naturally, the first step is what keeps them engaged, what keeps them investing, what actually ultimately drives outcomes for them. So, I mean, look, from a priority point of view, is what is going to genuinely move the needle, and that's just not what is new or interesting. So there's this data insight and information-led world that we now live in, and that still exists. Just the question is the quality and the clarity of that data you're getting, and then us. And I go back to this. A really interesting piece that I would say is I would leave it with you, but I'm going to begin with it anyway, is that this whole realm about how we tell stories or storytelling is built around this duet, not a duel. Okay, because there needs to be this symbiotic relationship where, whether you're the customer or whether you're the client, is what is real and what is fake. Okay, and for us is we have to. I mean, I suppose you could call us the gatekeepers in making sure that we tell the truth and we present the truth, but we present it in a way that actually moves the needle in the sense of what that person needs or how they interact with that. And that in some cases actually showcases in the data that we then invest in or we analyze to see those proof points about the quality of that. And then, of course, you go into the next stage of that scenario, which is transactional, understanding that. How do you go even further? What's the true value of that? And then that goes into the test and learn processes. Is what did you fail on? Because everyone assumes failure is a bad thing. I'm on the opposite side of that. I believe that if you're running media campaigns or marketing campaigns, or you're talking to people, the things that don't work are the things that actually make you even better.
Oh, that is interesting. Nora, at Fotor, what do you believe is the top priorities that you would keep in mind to get the client's attention?
Yeah, so like with Fotor, it's like a very AI native company, that is for sure. And then we've been like doing AI since day one. So like for our top priority, definitely in terms of like data privacy, we've been carefully evaluating them, especially when they were like allowed to share those data, or like when they were sharing contents. It's all around on our community. So like indeed, like every day we have like over 300K in terms of like social media assets being sending out from our users. So it's like massive volumes of them. So like so like in terms of creation, we don't actually like how to like restrict them, but we actually like how we want to amplify it's like the good contents. So we actually having our own algorithm for the good one, and then they being like also like promoted by the other users. They like them, or they also like remix them, and then they will using the algorithm automatically can be pushed on the top of our community, and then that will be successfully like amplifying those like good contents, for example. So like those good AI contents like definitely should be like promoted and also should be shown on the top places. But indeed, there were also like some lower quality of the contents that still exist, because AI is amplifying both way, like either the good way or the bad way. But like it's also like helping with the very good in terms of the speed of iteration. So like creation definitely, but like iteration is also very important. So AI can help them to iterate. For example, they have like a like not like a very high quality content at the very first place, but then they can also iterate very quickly and then also validate it within like small crowds of people, or like small crowds of like organization very quickly. So iteration and validation also like very important, like in the whole like signal, and also how to like you can be very good way to like finally realize that there is some good contents exist. Yeah.
You've mentioned data security, which is integral, but you also mentioned good content. So what qualifies to be good content? So back to what is worthwhile for the client's attention. What are your parameters, if you don't mind sharing?
So I mean, this is a very good question. So like currently we are using algorithm, like so like whether those contents like actively been remixed by other users in our community, and then can be defined in our community as like a good content. And for the good contents, they might be very good in terms of visual appealing, that is for sure, and then they are attractive, very creative. So we have loads of like content creators on our platform been sharing like very good prompting skills, and also very good in terms of visual creativity. Those creativity can like hugely been like seen by people within our platforms. So like creativity is definitely the thing that been seen, because we do visual things. So like visual, it's all about like creativity, and then how they also like we see a lot of like hyper realistic things within the visual worlds. So this is not going to happen in the real life, in the physical world. So like with the visual power, visual AI, we can do that. So this is like something that we can see that is, AI can actually like unlock those creativity that won't going to be happen in the physical world. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. So AI can generate content at scale. But the question here is it helping brands make smarter decisions and connect more meaningfully with their audiences? Or is it quietly eroding that authenticity? What do you think, Kudzai?
Yeah, I think AI is fantastic for speed and scale. I think it allows brands to produce content faster than ever, like you've mentioned. I think the trade-off is then that a lot of content risks becoming repetitive or generic. I think we find that a lot of brands end up using similar prompts and tools, and when they do that, they often get quite similar outputs, which takes away from having a distinct brand identity within content creation. I think where AI is genuinely really powerful is in supporting that kind of personalization at scale element. There are some really, really good tools out there, such as Adobe Gen Studio, which allow people to tailor content to different audiences at like pace really, really quickly, so that what people are actually seeing as the end product of a campaign or asset is really personal to them, and really bespoke. So yeah, I think that kind of being said, I think real meaningful connections don't come from obviously volume. It comes from kind of insight and emotion and understanding who that end customer is. And that's something that AI can't replicate, but it can definitely support in terms of how we get there.
And from your experience, do you believe that there is an appetite for more authenticity or human-led content, or is AI is able to actually replicate or at least get something as effective as that personal conversation?
Yeah, 100%. I definitely think there's still a lot of room and appetite for that human element. I think AI is only as good as its user, so any input that goes in will ultimately determine what you get out at the end of it. But AI can't replicate emotion, it can't replicate, experiences, memories, and I think all of those types of things end up creating the content that people resonate with the most. I think we're in an age where there is so much noise, to your earlier question, that people really appreciate being seen and being heard and feeling like they can relate to something. And I think, yeah, AI can't necessarily do that. So whilst it can help us get there in terms of how we use it to get to that end goal, but actually there's definitely like a massive need still for humans, because AI doesn't know what it doesn't know. So it's up to us to kind of take our real life experiences and think about how we use AI to help support, building those into a campaign or content or whatever that kind of looks like.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I concur with a lot of the points there, because if we just sit back and think about this for a second, is AI has undoubtedly improved the speed for businesses to lead and the ability to produce more content at a scale that we could never even have fathomed or imagined, which is hugely valuable, absolutely. But then again, we go into the meaningful quality and connection that doesn't come from just the speed alone. It comes from how relevant and resonating that content or what it is that you're creating helps. So, we look at it as this accelerating knowledge, right, and revolutionizing something. So you're trying to do something very different, but with the help of something now that has an incredible amount of data. So what we're seeing, obviously, is a lot of that content that is technically sound, and the responses are technically sound. And this is where we get into the prompting, the quality of prompting. And you'll even see, I saw something where if you're going to prompt AI to do something for you, you can even question AI to ask if the quality of your prompt is going to give you a quality response. So you're asking it a layer, going to go down in an even deeper layer. So this whole brevity is king scenario. And look, it's easy to generate, but it's harder to truly connect these days. I mean, we find it much harder to work out who we're communicating with, where are they, what platforms do they live on. The whole media matrix is complex, to say the least. The one thing I would say to people listening is don't be afraid to go into discovery and exploration. Don't be afraid to not be in a platform where you think your competitors are and that they are doing better, because invariably is that sometimes the data does lie. You just need to really know that the question is whether AI is going to help or harm authenticity. It's whether it's going to be used to deepen understanding or just increase quality of output. So the brands that get this right will use AI, and of course it will respond faster and explore ideas, but it needs to be grounded in real insight. And that's the difference, right? Connecting the dots between the data, the behavior, the context, and so that what they put into the actual, the marketing campaigns means something. And you use the team experience as much as you possibly can to get really down deep and dirty.
So speaking of the marketing campaign, David, so we spoke about iteration, validation, the creative instinct, and how the creative content may appeal to the client base. We spoke about market intuition, but when it comes to drawing a line between what would you give AI to do to interact with the customers or the clients, and what would you leave to your team, the human team, where is that line?
Great question. Because
go ahead, David.
Oh, sorry, no, is that directed to someone else? If I just jumped in there,
you can go ahead. It's fine, yeah.
Okay, apologies if I had, but look, the one thing again is my feedback is go and explore every model. Okay, go and explore every model. See which one actually is more personable, more, it feels more comfortable. This is no different to using any other form of UX or navigating an app on your mobile phone. But again, it's also be cognizant of the data that you're putting in there. You know, the models are trained on data, but they're trained on open source data, but they're also trained on private data if they have access to that. So you do need to be, confident and knowing that whatever you're putting in there is not going to be a scenario where you're going to have a problem with some sort of privacy leak, or there's some GDPR issues there. So AI, I love AI because it can identify patterns. It can look further afield. What it doesn't do is it doesn't look forward. AI looks backwards. Okay, it looks at the historical context of everything there, and then it will find the things that it thinks it needs to give to you that's going to please you. So again, you could actually be a little bit more. I know there was some data we saw last year back off our US and UK research. We also saw this, that there was a high percentage of Americans that were saying please and thank you to AI because they were worried that in 30 years time, if the robots did take over, it might let them survive a little bit longer. I mean, this is the craziness of the world that we live in, right? We just need to work out how to utilize it to the best of our capabilities and just be aware of what it does and how it does it.
Very interesting. Thank you, David. Kudzai, what you've seen in the campaigns you've led, what are the overarching ideas that you can bring in when it comes to where to trust AI, and where would you leave the tasks for a human to do?
Yeah, no, I think for me the line is quite clear in terms of like my role and how I would use AI day to day. I think I definitely trust AI with kind of data heavy and repetitive tasks in terms of helping me make more time for things that require my creative brain and mindset. So things such as kind of analyzing performance, I think AI is great for that. Give it like a fat Excel document and it has a whale of a time. So I think things like that, spotting patterns, improving efficiency, AI really shines in those areas. It's great at processing information at scale and helping you to kind of optimize off the back of that. But I think when it comes to strategy, creativity and decision making, the bulk of that really has to sit with the humans, because ultimately that's where you define your brand positioning, shape your core messaging and decide the direction you want to take your brand. And I think a lot of that, it kind of leads back to what I said earlier. Often a lot of the decisions that go into building a brand end up going back to personal experiences, pain points that we've all had in real life and emotions that we feel day to day, and AI can't replicate that. So I think it's important to make sure that your original source is still us humans, and AI can kind of then make your life easier when it comes to, for me personally, the data, the mundane tasks that don't necessarily need creative mindset, but it's all about efficiency and getting stuff out the door.
You're saying we're safe for now, Kudzai, yeah?
Yeah.
So really draw that line wherever there is something that needs a criticality, personalization, bringing on some authentic ideas and, of course, novel ideas as well.
Exactly. And I guess to David's point, AI only looks in the past, right? So even if you say to it something around trends and, what could perform well, it's looking at historic data. But in today's world, things move at such a quick pace that, there are trends happening, today that will go into the future and AI is not aware of them. So I think a lot of the really well-performing campaigns and assets really do come from that relatability and that authenticity, which, like I say, AI can't necessarily replicate. One of my all-time favorite ads is from Dove. I can't remember what year they did it, but they did an ad talking about how in 2020, it might have actually been 2026 or 2027 or something, like 90, not this number, but something like 90% of all ads that we'll see will be using AI. And in that ad, they were basically showcasing real people, real bodies, things that are relatable to us in real life in terms of moles and roles and things that we all kind of experience, which if you told AI to create a person, it probably wouldn't include some of those, things that we're insecure about day to day. And I think that kind of relatability element can't be replicated by AI. And I think that's where it's so important that we utilize AI and we use it for, where it can help us, but we definitely stay grounded in terms of we're creating all of the content we're doing for people like us, not people like the AI algorithms.
Yeah, I would just add to that is that there is a huge concern about the quality of the output of media when it's built in AI. So whilst I'm fundamentally with humans working in perfect harmony with AI, but the human is still the critical factor when it comes to judgment, prioritization, and interpreting what actually matters. Yeah, what we need to do is ensure that we do the right thing about how AI is outputted and the formats of what and the channels that it's put out, so that we don't end up with this entirety of AI slop and content that is actually just deteriorating the quality of what we stand for.
Yeah, totally agree. Just try to add on David's talk. It's like very interesting because I totally agree. Like we are more like a human is more like an director in this sense. Like we are just a judgment, making some more judgment and then judging and then directing the whole directions. And then like AI is just like our co-pilot and also our army, let's say, and then just trying to executing things in a very fast way. So this is clearly like what we all kind of like agree somehow. Yeah, and yeah, in terms of like human and also like AI, recently I found out like talked to an AI director, and then he's like creating an AI movie for one of the campaign, and then this is about like an fire. So like a fire education. So in this sense, like it's very difficult to like do the actual filming or shooting for this campaign because they need to really like make some fire in this room, and then they need to rescue this little children. So like then like AI can make it and then also can amplify it if they like execute it very good. So like eventually the campaign went out very good, and then the content is using more of like a hybrid way because there is like some interviews within that, and then also having the whole like scenarios that how we actually gonna execute those like fire rescue like performance over there. So it's very interesting that this kind of things we cannot actually put human into like a fire scenario and then do the actual filming. So which is like AI can actually help us with this kind of like in a good way. Yeah.
And how do you measure effectiveness of utilizing AI, Nora? I know you are very much pro integrating AI in the entire workflow when it comes to the marketing campaign. So how do you ensure, you mentioned iteration, but how do you ensure that it has been effective and it has reached the ultimate target at the end?
So overall, we're definitely having the overall impressions within, for example, this contents create how many impressions, and then like the conversion of this contents, and then eventually after 7 days, whether they still like remain on our platform and then keep using them, and then also paying for the follow-on subscription. So this is how we currently measure them. Yeah.
Fantastic. I was looking at two reports from Deloitte at the end of 2024 and at the end of 2025. And in 2024, only 40% reported benefits from integrating AI in client relationship management. And that percentage stalled and even dropped to 38% in 2025. Kudzai, where do you believe the barrier or the driver of that stalling or the underwhelming realization of AI benefits in client relationship management and marketing campaigns?
Yeah, I think the stalling is probably down to like, yeah, people just, like I said before, not knowing how to use it correctly. I think AI has definitely improved targeting, like we've spoken about, and it's helped people or help brands to reach their kind of audiences. But I think the issue is that targeting isn't the same as persuasion. And I think people kind of confuse the two when talking about AI sometimes. You can definitely put, the right message in front of the right person, but if the creative doesn't resonate or the proposition isn't strong, then you're not going to get that conversion, and there's still going to be that kind of performance gap. And I think that's where some of that underwhelming results are coming from. People expect AI to come in and fix everything, fix performance, give them a, you know, £1 million business plan, but actually the strategic fundamentals still aren't strong. So I think that's probably a big kind of issue where people don't really understand that the importance of, to David's points earlier, that the importance of the quality of the prompts that we're putting into AI and understanding where it really is adding value versus where it's wasting time, basically. But yeah, I think it's super important that people understand that targeting and persuasion are two completely different things.
David, where do you see from the information publication, from the marketing side, where do you see the barriers coming from?
Well, I suppose I'm reframing this in my own head. Is how I would look at it as well. Don't try and shoehorn artificial intelligence. By the way, I'll be delighted on the day when we are not saying AI in every sentence. So it becomes, you know, as part of the fabric of life, right? Just like the mobile phone in our hand is, or the desktop computer, whatever it may be, or even the, you know, the Bluetooth headphones. And by the way, it is coming. Okay, there will be a time where everything we all have AI companions. Those companions are different to the original versions that we had, and we still have them now with the Alexas and the Siris. But if AI is then embedded and it understands you, learns more about you, and recognizes that, then it becomes more of a personal assistant than just being another piece of technology that we have to shoehorn in. So going back to your point is, don't think that you have to do everything at speed now. Okay, so what I would say is you implement the technology into scenarios where you believe it can make a significant, it can complement something that you already have. It has an addition where it can plug in and actually make some of the things that you have internally more efficient. There are usually marketing tools that you have a subscription to that you're not even actually using correctly. So again, that's where AI can come in and actually then complement those pieces of technology. So of course, we are seeing significant measurable results when you implement it into your infrastructures, when it's speed, you know, understanding more campaigns, performance, missed recoveries, you know, post-sale data. So all of these things are much more responsive because you're layering in that. So that's where consistency does really matter. But if you're going to move from pilot to scale, and this is where most organizations necessarily struggle because of the expense or the pitch to the CFO about implementing another piece of technology alongside everything else you have, is proving that AI can actually work, right? It's embedding it into the systems that are reliable, repeatable, and trusted. And it always goes back to that trust. If you're going to play, just make sure you can trust everything that it does. And if you can't, then of course, you're still going to have the humans completely fundamentally layered into that to ensure that whatever you do output is the right thing to do.
Fantastic. So would you mind reiterating the innovations that have been delivering results, especially in marketing?
Yeah, on my side, look, content creation is an obvious thing, right? You know, if you're creating newsletters and you're dealing with a multitude of different partners, it's great for efficiencies. And again, so speed. I'll give you a good case in point, actually. We did a piece of UK research with 500 researchers last year about how they were utilizing and embedding AI into their current processes. And they were from the academia, business, science, discovery, even material science and sustainability. And what we found actually was that AI was helping them save 10 hours per week. 10 hours per week is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. 10 hours a week. But again, what they weren't doing was they weren't utilizing the trust, right? So some of them were outputting some of that AI without fully trusting or actually not doing enough due diligence to recognize what that was. But what that actually means is that if we start to implement this into marketing programs and initiatives, we're going to save millions of hours, which is millions of dollars in revenue spend for brands, not just in the UK, but globally. And we're talking about millions going on the GDP of the current government. And look, sovereign AI is on everyone's lips at the moment. So of the campaigns and partners that I've seen, where they've implemented it is understanding the data, understanding the quality of the storytelling that has come from a creative or a human that's created that. And then effectively, they then put that into the process and streamline that. Yeah, so a lot of the partners we're working with, I would say, they've already seen the fruits of their labour, and we could probably, I could probably send a few links out afterwards that you can share with the community that are on here.
So data, the process, and the streamlining are the key drivers to have an innovative and scalable solution. Kudzai, from your experience and from the campaigns that you've seen around, can you give us some examples where actually integrating AI was delivering measurable benefits?
There's one that comes to mind, which is there's this, so slight sidetrack, there's this Instagram page which I found sometime last year, and upon kind of like further investigation, it turns out the whole page was basically an AI created page. It was a fake company that was kind of playing out as this Parisian country club, and they had gone to the full extent of kind of creating like a website which had like a country club menu on it. They were selling merch, they had all the bells and whistles, and I really bought into it because the aesthetic of it was very, you know, I quite liked it. The vibe was quite nice. It looked like a really nice core brand. And yeah, upon kind of further investigation and digging, it turns out the brand didn't exist at all. But actually what the guys who set that brand up were able to do was use that as a kind of launching pad for something that was real, authentic and genuine. And off the back of that, they created a wine brand, which seems to be doing really, really well. Also Parisian, but it's kind of linked back to that kind of fake AI Instagram brand. So I think that's a really good example of where people are using AI to kind of get people's attention, get that engagement in, but in a really effective way. But then on the other side, using it to then launch into kind of like they've got like a bigger master plan, right? Like a wider strategy, and AI is just kind of like a piece in kind of making that happen. And I think that's a really clever way of kind of using it, thinking about what are the strengths of AI, what can it get me, but also what's my ultimate goal and how can I use AI to help bridge that gap, basically. And I think the company, for people who are interested, was called, I'll probably butcher the pronunciation, but it was called the Rochambeau Club on Instagram, so you can check them out. But yeah, off the back of that, they created like a really cool wine company.
Fantastic. Nora, tell me an example where a pilot actually turned into a scalable solution.
Yeah. So like previously, I think like it's still like a limited version of AI, like using chatbots. This is how we usually use, like with OpenAI, with GPT, with Gemini, and then use the chatbot weight. But now recently we also been releasing a new thing. It's called skills. So skill is kind of like you can also maximize them and then also scale it within like the same workflow. For example, if you're having a campaign and then but you, for example, your company, it's always like creating a consistent campaign, right? So it's like similar workflow. You still need to do like same like market research, and then you still like putting the same like brand image and tones, and also the way of like you communicating with the other audience. So the whole workflow is the same, but agentic marketing, always say agentic AI, is the way that you can keep repeating the same workflow. So we're using like skills and agentic AI is to actually make the whole workflow very scalable and then very fast in terms of execution. So we can actually, yeah.
Do you mind explaining to the audience the difference between prompting a chatbot and agentic AI, just to make the distinction? And I'm happy for you to elaborate more about how the agentic system actually works.
Yes. So like chatbot, you will say that it is always like a one one way, and also it's always like it cannot be always repeating. So every time you need to do like a new prompting, and then you need to generate the new things, and then it's not consistent enough. But like for agentic AI, it's basically, for example, if you do market research, you have a market research agent. And then if you do like a trends like recognition, you have a trends recognition agent. And then for us, we do also like a visual campaign generation agent. So within the whole workflow, you can actually just put your previous like data, or you put like the same prompt into different agents. So make the whole pipeline of workflow like very easily to be like giving you the similar repeating like campaigns on like the whole like on like different, like for example, you have different seasons of like campaign, or you have different campaigns for like same categories of products, but like different colors and different kind of style. Then you can execute them with the agentic AI instead of like a chatbot way. So this is very scalable, and we can see like a very fast execution. Yeah.
And how do you go about feeding this workflow authentic experiences and more personalized ideas to target the clients? How does that work?
So like currently we do an agent that is do visual generation. So you can put down like, for example, I want to choose like take in terms of publishing, take an example. So I just want to publish on TikTok, on Instagram, or on the other social media platform. So I can just select those platforms as your regular workflow. Then like the AI will gonna like memorize the whole thing that you will publish this kind of whole thing, and then giving you different sizes in terms of and different thumbnail of the contents that you want to generate. So this will be like a batch setting for your own like campaign like workflow. Yeah.
You just made me think of something, Nora. I always used to talk. I think I'm living on this mantra for longer than I can remember anyway. But I always used to say brands should talk to people the way people talk to people. Now and the reason why brands can do that, they can do that because there's a human behind the brand. All right, we culture it, we craft it, we create it, we nurture it, we do all of those magical things with that brand to take it out to that target audience, to then in turn deliver something of value, intrinsic value, and then something comes back in value to us, whereas the loves, the likes, the money. Now, if I was to replace brands with AI and say AI should talk to people the way people talk to people, it just can't, right? It can't do it. It needs us. So don't use AI as a crutch, okay? So when you've got a chatbot or an LLM or whatever piece of technology AI is embedded in, don't use it to tell you what you're going to have for breakfast. Use it to help you accelerate your own knowledge and insight in making better campaigns in the realms of marketing.
Totally agree. Yeah, the human taste is the center of the whole execution and the whole plan. Yeah.
That really takes us to the question that we're going to wrap up with, which is all about the one uncomfortable truth about AI that very few people are talking about. So to you all, what is your one truth that not many people are talking about? David?
Oh, good one. Okay, well, I have thousands of uncomfortable truths about AI, to be honest, but I'll try and give you one. I think it's accelerating activity without necessarily improving understanding. So the premise around this is at the end of the day, it's not about how much you generate, it's the quality of what you create, and can that quality of that content connect the right dots at the right time with enough confidence for us to act.
Speed and governance is a brilliant example for where everything is actually stalling when it comes to governing the tools that we're using at the moment. Kudzai, what is your one truth?
Yeah, I'd say mine is probably similar vein to David's. I think AI definitely exposes weak marketing, and I think that's probably something people shy away from. And I think, in all the stuff that we've spoken about today, it's clear that scaling ads doesn't lead to conversion. It just ends up wasting more budget if the foundations aren't up to scratch. So I think, yeah, people thinking that AI is kind of the fix for everything. It's not that. It definitely still needs a lot of work to kind of create something meaningful with it, and a lot of human input to support.
Fantastic. So for anyone who's really struggling with the fear of missing out, there's still a lot to build. There's a lot to validate and iterate in order to get the tech to work, in fact.
You should change it to the fear of missing in.
What do you think, Nora?
So yeah, I mean, like both of you like already speak very well in terms of this point. I mean, indeed, like most of the teams, they are scaling content, but like they're not like scaling performance. And also like AI is like removing all of the barriers to create. It's very easy to create, but like only high quality visuals or like high quality contents can like remain that will like keep, like we have limited attention, and then only the good thing and the high quality thing can actually remain in our memory. And then like with more like human touch or in your own like marketing, and then it will definitely better in terms of the storytelling. So the real thing I would tell all of the marketers is like knowing what works, and then understand your audience, and then making the right decisions. And then you are the director of the whole marketing, from market research to the final like even the final part of it. So like marketer and also storyteller, actually it's in the golden era, I will say. Like it's not like uh, the truth that people like uncomfortable with. Is actually all of the marketer should be very comfortable with, because we have all of the tools that can help us to amplify your own creativity and your power. Yeah.
Fantastic. Now, this takes us to the audience questions. We've received a few brilliant questions to our panelists, and I would like to start with the first question, if you don't mind, Kudzai. Bijal asked, is comparing AI-generated content an effective approach for improving marketing campaign quality?
I think it's one of those where AI is an important consideration. I don't think it should be what we use as our fundamental to improve content or marketing quality. I think ultimately that goes back to, having doing our market research, having panels, or having our market research. Basically, that's ultimately where it all kind of goes back to. I don't think it's a replacement for anything human. I think it's just a case of AI is very signaling of where we're going as within the world. It's very much new technology, and it's something we have to think about. How do we allow this to kind of integrate into our day to day? And instead of fighting against it, it should be more around how can we use it to support us, and where can it kind of add value. But yeah, I think it's one of those where, I go on social media, and obviously that one example I gave, I was surprised that it wasn't a real company, but for the most part, I feel like everyone's quite good at identifying what's AI and what's human. I think there's a lot of stuff that AI can't necessarily replicate, whether it's you're reading a caption and something just feels off because it just doesn't feel quite right, or an image just looks a little bit too perfect. I think for the most part, we're quite in tune with identifying the differences. But it's definitely a growing market. AI is only going to get better. This is kind of day zero, day one for AI. So it's kind of scary to think where it's going to be in 10, 20 years. And I think the best way for us to kind of get ahead of that is to understand it, work with it, and not fight against it, and think about how we can kind of use it to help us kind of go forward.
Anyone would like to add? When it comes to comparing AI generating content to improve marketing campaign quality, do you believe that helps with any iteration or validation?
I'll
Who
also
is that
add my
to?
own answer. So, David, I was going to say, I think a really good way of identifying, I think it's also bespoke, right? It's a case by case thing. And I think A/B tests are really, really useful. If there is a question mark around, is this, is this AI content helping to inform what we do in the human world? We do A/B tests at Lloyds banking group all the time. And I think they're a really great way of gaining really valuable insight in terms of how customers are responding to the content and identifying exactly what points within the content are driving the difference in behavior. So, I think an AI versus human A/B test is something that's worth doing if it's something that you're thinking about playing with, sending AI comms to half your audience, human comms to the other half, and seeing what kind of comes back. But I think in doing that, it's important to keep an eye on what are the changes so you can track what's actually driving the difference in performance, rather than just saying we used AI so it worked. It might not be relying on AI. It might be that actually in that comms that was produced by AI, the proposition was really, really clear versus the one that was produced by a human. It was a bit more diluted. Yeah.
I think you're going to see, by the way, just on that note, I think you're going to see more content and media published with the asterisks or the tiny little line at the bottom that says, it's like when you see an ad for finance or a credit card, and it said in the small print, you do this at your own, you gamble or you invest at your own risk. There will be a scenario that has something along the lines of, this was tweaked and edited and complemented by AI. And then the question is will those LLMs, which ones of them are actually going to go beyond the value of training their data to become more efficient and the quality of the output? It might even be a scenario where some of those LLMs become a brand within a brand, right? They are the next Google, and don't get me wrong, Gemini is part of that anyway, but that LLM actually starts to build its own brand value and trust, even though it's outputting in AI, if that makes sense.
We have actually a question about trust from Carla. She's asking, do you think that creates client company mistrust to begin with? Like referring to the Instagram example, you start a client company relationship based on a lie.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely can. And I think that's the risk, right, when you're using AI, especially now where I think there are a lot of people who are against AI quite strongly. And if they sniff AI used anywhere, they will kind of go against it. But I do think it depends at what point you catch your customer at as well. Like for me, that page, if you look at it, there's no real value add, right? It's kind of like it's something I'd kind of look at for entertainment. I'm not actually looking to go to that country club. I've got no intent to kind of follow through in terms of conversion. So for me, it was more of this is a really nicely curated page. Let me just see what kind of stuff they're doing. And then it kind of led me down a bit of a rabbit hole where I then kind of found that actually it's a fake page and they actually do this real wine kind of business. But I think for customers with intent, 100% that would definitely display distrust, because if you do look on their website, I'm pretty sure when you go to kind of sign up, it's constantly kind of always booked up, which creates this fake sense of, urgency and demand, I guess. So yeah, I think it's definitely like a push and pull. It's about what you're actually trying to get from it. But yeah, for me as a customer who was just browsing and kind of like passing by, it gave them engagement, it gave them exposure. And I'm obviously talking about it now, so it did something in terms of those two metrics. But I would never then go on to buy wine from them, because I'm like, actually, is your wine even any good if you're a fake company? But there'll be some people who actually buy into that. It really does depend, but I think definitely it would reduce kind of like the trust between them and the customer. But it depends how big their audience is and how much buying they've got.
Yeah, I would just say on that, for those people listening and then those that are eventually listening in, is you are not alone. Okay, everyone is on the same journey. It's just a matter of where you are in your learning and development. We're on the precipice of total AI domination, right? It's everywhere. You can't get away from it. And for those that haven't started to explore, understand, or utilize it, They will, as they did with mobile phones, as they did with previous technologies that we went into panic stations about and thought it was going to take over. It will become part of the fabric of life. It's just some will adopt it faster than others. What we need to make sure we do is we use it appropriately, we use it diligently, we use it properly, and then you see all the magical things that come out of it, right? Drug discovery, all of the things that could change the planet that we live on. That's the bit that's exciting about it, and it just happens to be that marketeers love to think about how we can tell better stories faster, and that's why it's really, really useful on that front.
We've got questions coming through. Very much good questions. One is mostly wrapping up the session. Does AI or LLM differentiates between signal or noise? Yes or no? As we speak now.
What was the question? Sorry.
Does AI or LLM differentiates between signal and noise?
Good question. I mean, definitely some of the agent can help, but we are the true decision maker that can identify what is the signal, what is the noise. Yeah, I think human is still the one who we're gonna finally do the judgment. Yeah.
It's still about the quality. I was going to say, sorry, Kudzai. I was just going to say, it's still about the quality of the data that lives in that platform, how it translates it, and then how it gives it back to you. It's still your job to interpret what you do with it.
Yeah.
Right?
I was just going to add that I think as well, AI sometimes has a tendency to please us, and it will kind of tell us what we want to hear. So I think sometimes it's not the most reliable, and you kind of need to just fact check yourself. So it might give the impression that it can distinguish between, but maybe it's because that it knows that's what you want to hear rather than actually adding value.
Yeah, that's a great. Actually, from a prompting point of view, ask it to be meaner in the way that ask it to be more forceful and fierce in the sense of how it responds to you. Yeah, you could even tell it to stop being nice and be brutal in the sense of, is my content piece really that bad? Play with it, explore, experiment, and see what you come back with, and then share the results with us afterwards, please.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, Kudzai. Thank you, Nora. This takes us to the end of our webinar today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. Thank you very much for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day.